is more killing. We are dying from starvation. We are dying from killing. No one is listening to us.
Israel, birthed in the shadow of genocide, is now committing one. Gaza is being butchered in broad daylight, its children blown to pieces, its hospitals bombed.
أنا ضاري ولادي إيش ذنبنا يعملوا فينا هيك؟ ملناش بأي شيء، إيش ذنبنا يعملوا فينا هيك؟ أبوهم مسكين وأنا زي ما أنتم شايفين أولادي صغار.
This isn't war, it is execution.
Isolate, boycott, whatever is, will make the Israelis accountable for what they are doing.
How did the victims of Auschwitz become the butchers of Gaza? How did a nation built on never again become a machine of mass slaughter? And how is the world letting this happen? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. As we report the story, at least 61,709 Palestinians are dead. 17,492 of them were children. Over 111,000 injured. More than 14,222 missing, buried under rubble or lost to disease and starvation. These are not casualties of war. They are the deliberate targets of a campaign of annihilation. It began as retaliation for a deadly Hamas attack, but it quickly mutated into systematic obliteration. Entire neighborhoods have been turned to dust. Aid lines are bombed. Famine is used as a weapon. This isn't just war, it's genocide, and international organizations agree. So why does the world remain silent? What's happening in Gaza is not collateral damage. It is not a war between two equal sides. It is a one-sided massacre, a cold-blooded campaign to wipe out a trapped, starving population. The Israeli military has dropped more firepower on Gaza in months than the Allies dropped on Germany during World War II. Entire city blocks turned to ash. Schools, mosques, refugee camps, bombed without warning. Gaza's civilians, half of them children, are being systematically eradicated. This is the textbook definition of genocide. And leading legal scholars and experts on the matter agree.
Let's put aside the Holocaust because it was really a unique phenomena. This was a systematic mass killing of millions with gas chambers. I mean, let's put it aside and not compare anything, because if we compare it, we will soon realize that it's nothing to compare. And then we say, okay, so it's not so bad what's going on in Gaza. So let's put this aside. Until recent days, I didn't use the word genocide. I think and I thought that we should leave it to the International Court of Justice, who is hopefully about publishing their resolution about it. I don't know why it takes them so much time. By the time they will end their discussions, I am afraid there will be not many people left in Gaza, or at least not alive. But they take their time, months and months and months and months. I don't know why, really, I don't know why. Either it is a genocide or not. How much can you discuss it, for God's sake? But in any case, the legal definition should be theirs. But in recent days, in the recent 2 weeks, I would say, when I see the daily slaughtering of people who are queuing for aid in Gaza, for some kind of food supply, thousands of people who have to wait in 4 stations all around the Gaza Strip, 2 million people with 4 stations of aid. Each of them is open only 1 hour a day. Can you believe how cruel it is? And they are being shot dead systematically And my newspaper, Haaretz, published an investigation that commanders of the IDF are giving orders to shoot them. This looks like genocide. I'm disappointed and not disappointed because on one hand, I'm very disappointed. It's not only Russia. Remember South Africa, the first apartheid state. Israel is the second one. The world knew very well what to do. And it was very effective. If not the international community, South Africa is until today an apartheid state. And we both know it.
Yes.
But the world intervened not in talkings, not in declarations, not in condemnations, but in action. Same should have been with Israel. On the other hand, I'm not disappointed because I didn't expect much. Israel is the darling of the West. Israel is, first of all, the darling of the United States, especially under this very weird administration led by Donald Trump. Israel can do whatever it wants, until now at least. I hope it will end now, and maybe it will. But the real disappointment is the lack of connection between popular sentiments all over the world, the public opinions all over the world. Their heart goes to the Palestinians, and the governments, most of them, if not all of them, for sure in the West, for sure in Europe and the United States, the governments are covering it up, doing nothing, but really nothing, to save Gaza.
Amnesty International and multiple UN experts have sounded the alarm. Israel's actions meet every single criterion of genocide as outlined by the Genocide Convention. Killings, bodily and mental harm, and life conditions calculated to destroy. Israel is not merely at war, it is carrying out a campaign of ethnic cleansing under the guise of counterterrorism. Israel's officials have not hidden their intentions. Cabinet ministers have called for the flattening of Gaza, the obliteration of its people. One even called for using nuclear weapons. Israeli airstrikes have targeted bakeries, aid convoys, and water infrastructure. This isn't just warfare, it's extermination by deprivation. Food, water, medicine deliberately blocked. Gaza is starving and Israel holds the key to every warehouse.
The discussion has also been through this period about whether or not genocide is taking place. And at this point, it really has become irrefutable because we look at a number of things when we're talking about, is a situation genocide? So the first one is the intent there? So part of the definition is the intent to destroy a particular group. And this is what makes genocide different and also quite difficult to prove in a court of law, because you have to be able to prove that the perpetrators intended to destroy that people. And so the question is, how do we prove that? There are a couple of main ways, and the first way that we prove that is to look at statements that are made by prominent figures. So particularly, for example, political leaders and military leaders or other prominent people in a particular society. So people who have a media presence, strong cultural leaders. So in this case, in particular, we'd be talking about political and military leaders in Israel who have, from October 2023, been making very overt statements about the starvation of the Palestinian people, the destruction of Palestine, and of course, blocking aid, blocking the provision of supplies to the Palestinian people in Gaza. So those statements of intent have been there since the beginning and continue to be made by the political and military leadership in Israel. The second way that we can prove that intent is by looking at the actions of the alleged perpetrators. So looking at a pattern of conduct. And that's what we would see here, which would really say that there is an intent to destroy these people, because we are seeing indiscriminate bombing, long-term indiscriminate bombing that is killing people, that is destroying livelihoods, that is destroying infrastructure, that is destroying healthcare facilities and healthcare workers. Now we have also for some time been seeing the denial of humanitarian aid, within which we mean the denial of food, the denial of healthcare, the denial of medicines in particular. So we're putting a lot of people into a small place which means that communicable diseases increase and access to food decreases. And so obviously what is needed for those is food and medicine, both of which are being denied to the people. So obviously if you are denying food and medicine to people who are starving and who are ill, that an obvious outcome of that is going to be death. That's a high likelihood. And so therefore you have to say, well, obviously their intent must be to kill, to destroy, at least in part, the Palestinian people of Gaza. And I think in particular, we've seen also recently, in the past months, even in the past weeks, Israeli military open firing on people who are queuing up, who are trying to get food, and they are being open fired on, which has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of people. So obviously the idea is to create fear in people so that they don't even want to try and get food, because that is just another situation in which they will risk death.
The irony is sickening. Once herded into ghettos and marked for death, Jews under Nazi rule experienced the dehumanizing machinery of genocide. Today, Israel is forcing Palestinians into a modern-day ghetto, Gaza. It is fenced, blockaded, and watched by drones. Electricity, internet, medicine, building supplies, rationed or denied. Every Palestinian baby born in Gaza is born into an open-air prison where death rains from the skies. Before October 2023, the United Nations already called Gaza unlivable. 80% of its people depended on aid. Unemployment and poverty skyrocketed under Israel's blockade. But since the 7th of October, Gaza's slow death became a fast one. This is not war. This is liquidation. This is genocide with GPS precision and satellite coordination. This is the deliberate crushing of a people's will to survive. Memory of the Holocaust should have been a moral compass. Instead, Israel has turned it into a license to kill. It is grotesque that a nation born out of genocide now invokes that very genocide to justify its own. Israel claims never again, but it has twisted that phrase into never again for us, but maybe for them. To even whisper that Israel could be committing genocide is branded as anti-Semitism. But what could be more anti-Semitic than weaponizing the Holocaust to shield state-sponsored slaughter? What could be more disgraceful than invoking gas chambers to silence criticism of white phosphorus?
Honestly, what we have today is incredibly tragic. And I think that where we have, yes, the Genocide Convention came about in part as a result of the Holocaust. And in fact, the definition of genocide and the Genocide Convention itself was a creation of a Polish Jewish legal expert, Raphael Lemkin, who himself lost family in the Holocaust. And I think one of the important things to remember is that the Jewish people have a fear, an existential fear that someone will destroy their people. And the reason that they have that fear is because it happened to them. And it happened to them in the lifetime of people that are still alive today. So this is not something that is completely coming out of nowhere. This is something based on an experience that happened to their people, where there was the destruction of 6 million of their people. And so their fear is grounded in what happened to the Holocaust. And unfortunately, we can never undo the Holocaust. And therefore, we can never take away that fear that exists because of that. I think it's important to remember that. But while we are balancing the fact that, of course, even if Israel had a right to self-defense against an armed attack from a non-state group, in this case Hamas and other potential terrorist groups, that there is certainly no justification for the commission of genocide. And I feel that what we have here is an incredibly tragic situation of a people who are overcome with fear, which is resulting in horrific crimes being committed against another people. And unfortunately, in history, we have seen this too often, where victims become perpetrators, become victims, and so on in cyclical violence over times, even hundreds of years. So it is overall just incredibly tragic circumstances.
Genocide is not a sacred term reserved for one people. It is a legal and moral alarm meant to prevent mass murder, not excuse it. When Israel bombs a hospital full of premature babies or blocks food until mothers feed their starving toddlers grass, we cannot be silent because of historical guilt. We cannot protect the legacy of one genocide by ignoring the reality of another. Over 61,709 dead, 80% of them civilians, thousands of children buried under rubble, over 2 million people displaced. These are not just statistics. These are entire generations wiped out. Families incinerated in their sleep. Doctors killed inside operating rooms. Mothers forced to choose which child to carry and which to leave behind. This is not self-defense. This is systematic destruction. Israel thrives on the trauma of its past, but trauma is no excuse for tyranny. The Holocaust was a crime against humanity. What Israel is doing in Gaza is also a crime against humanity. That doesn't diminish Jewish suffering. It demands moral consistency. If we swore to never allow genocide again, we must not be selective in our outrage. The Gaza genocide proves that memory without empathy is a weapon. Israel remembers its own suffering but feels nothing for the suffering it inflicts. Its leaders invoke Auschwitz to justify starvation, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. They parade Holocaust survivors while bulldozing Palestinian homes. They cry over gas chambers while sealing Gazans in a coffin of concrete and fire. And as Gaza is reduced to rubble, those trying to document the horror are being buried beneath it. Reporting from Gaza is a death sentence with a deadline. Journalists there don't have flak jackets. They have targets on their backs. There's no safe zone, no press freedom, no satellite truck in a war zone. Just shattered phones, dying batteries, and trauma. Reporters work without electricity, without food, without sleep. We spoke with Ghada Al-Kurd, a journalist from the ground in Gaza, and this is what she had to say about what journalists are experiencing in Gaza. Ghada, I can't say stay safe, are you safe, or will you be safe? These are all empty words. What we've seen in the past months or so of what's happening in Gaza, the uncertainty speaks volumes of the situation on the ground. So I'll just begin with asking you, how's the situation on the ground right now?
Well, we are talking now about 21 months of genocide against the Palestinian people, against more than 2 million people who are living in a small zone of Gaza Strip. We cannot describe the situation in the ground. It's lots of bombing around the hour, lots of airstrike, Israeli airstrike, targeting schools, tents, residential buildings, hospitals, even people who are walking in the streets, or even people who are staying in cafes or restaurants. Regarding the starvation, it's more than 3 months now, and the Palestinian people who are living inside Gaza, they are starving from the lack of food. People are going to humanitarian aid sites to get some parcel of food where they are being shot by the Israelis, by the Israeli army, and no one can rescue them from there. Types of killing around the hour against the Palestinian, against children, against women, against old, elderly people. Hospitals, medical centers, they are running out from medical supplies. They are running out from fuel. People, they are collapsing. They are walking in the street and they cannot move because they have become very weak. Personally, for myself, we are losing too much weight because of the starvation. We cannot even in our tents because of the heavy airstrikes around the hour against the people. We can say like the Gaza Strip is separated to two parts now, north of Gaza and south of Gaza, and both of them, they are under attack around the hour. People, they are seized now in west of Gaza city, or in the middle area, or in Mawasil. And we are talking about 2 million people. They are not allowed for them to go to the eastern areas of Gaza Strip, because there are Israeli military operations in North Gaza, in eastern areas of Gaza City and North Gaza. Also in the middle area and in the south of Gaza, I mean, like in Khan Yunis city, and Rafah is totally under the military operation. People of Rafah, they are no longer can go back to their houses in this city. Even in North Gaza, we are talking about Jabalia town, Beit Hanun, and Beit Lahia. They are all under Israeli military operation, and people, they have evacuated this area for many months, and they are living in western parts of Gaza, inside tents, inside destroyed houses, maybe even in the streets under the high temperature of summer, where they are looking for some small amount of food or some healthy water, which is not available all the time. The disease are spread now between kids, between girls, boys, and even adults like us.
Right.
We are suffering from lack of food, which affects in our physical situation. Sometimes we cannot even do our works because we need some energy, we need some food. We are talking about, it's not allowed for any healthy food to enter Gaza. We are talking about the vegetables, the fruits, chicken, meat, eggs. We are not seeing them in the local market or in the Mediterranean aid, and this is a very dangerous problem for us.
Right.
Like,
What are you surviving on, Gaza? What's the basic food, even if you're getting any, what's the basic food that you're actually eating?
We are depending sometimes on rice, on some kind of lentils, and we have some popular food here called falafel. It's made from beans, and all the time we are eating beans. The vegetables that we have already here, it's from the local production, and it's very high prices and with little amount. No one can go and buy this amount. So we are talking about just canned food, lentils, rice, beans. That's all what we have. We don't have sugar or sweets. We don't have chocolate, or even like we don't have any kind of juice. We are talking about the essentials elements of food. It's not available.
What about children? What about children? Baby products, food, milk?
Even like baby milk, dairy milk, it's not available, and it's very high prices. Children, babies, they are dying from malnutrition. They need some elements to build their body, but all of the children here, you can see them in the street. They are become very dark because of the sun heat, and they become like very thin, and even they are playing in sewage or in the street. They are doing nothing. They are chasing us all the time. Like as journalists, they are chasing us, asking for some money or some bread or some food. We are keeping killing them. We are in the same situation. We are also suffering from the starvation, from the lack of food. The whole situation is affecting us, the 2 million people here in Gaza.
This is not historical justice, it's historical vengeance. How has the West responded to this genocide? With complicity. The United States of America vetoes every UN resolution demanding a ceasefire. European leaders wring their hands, issue soft condemnations, then ship more weapons. The same countries that taught Holocaust history in every classroom are now bankrolling a genocide in real time. You cannot teach Anne Frank in the morning and send bombs to Gaza in the evening. You cannot mourn the Warsaw Ghetto and ignore the annihilation of Khan Yunis. The moral rot is staggering, and to call this genocide is not to deny Jewish suffering, it's to affirm Palestinian humanity. If the world truly learned from the Holocaust, Gaza would not be burning today. The time for moral gymnastics is over. You don't get to commit genocide just because genocide was once committed against you. The Holocaust was the gravest atrocity in human history, but it does not grant eternal immunity for crimes against others. If anything, it demands that we fight harder to stop them. To defend Palestinians is not to hate Jews, it is to love justice. And justice today means one thing: ending the genocide in Gaza. Not tomorrow, not after another UN report, now.
The Israeli propaganda, the Israeli strategy in the recent years found a very efficient way to silence the world, and to criminalize any critics about Israel. Namely, anyone who dares to say something bad about Israel, to criticize Israel, even Israeli friends who really care about Israel, even Jews who care about Israel. If you dare to say some critical things about Israel, immediately you are labeled as an anti-Semite. So I want to tell you that most of the critics of Israel today, not all of them, but most of the critics of Israel in the world today are people of conscience. They have nothing to do with anti-Semitism. When you see the dying babies in the hospitals of Gaza, the starving babies in the streets, the women, the children, the destruction, what are you supposed to feel? To salute to those who are responsible for it, or to scream and attack them and talk against them and criticize them? What does this has to do with anti-Semitism? Calling free Palestine is a very legitimate call. What does this have to do with anti-Semitism? So there are anti-Semitism, there is anti-Semitism, there are anti-Semites. They should be fought. Many of them use the current situation in order to come out from the closet, so to say. But by the end of the day, most of the critics about Israel today is a genuine moral critic, and I support it. It wasn't difficult from the point of view of the government, the secret services, the IDF. The establishment didn't touch me. It is trying to attack my newspaper, but until now, not very successfully, to stop publishing in my newspaper, to stop all the governmental subscriptions, but we can stand it. Until now, we still gain total freedom. Where it is much harder, it is in the street, which usually in times of war, and you know it from your own country, becomes more nationalistic and less tolerant, and many times also racist and militaristic. And this becomes harder. For example, the Israeli TV, in which I used to appear quite often, totally bans me ever since the war started. But let's remember, I'm really not the victim of the war. The victims of the war are in Gaza.
What Israel is doing in Gaza is not just a war crime. It is not just a humanitarian crisis. It is genocide. Slow or fast, with bombs or blockades, it is genocide. And if we fail to stop it, we have no right to invoke never again. Because never again means nothing if it doesn't apply to Palestinians too. We must speak, we must scream, we must act, not because we hate Israel, but because we love humanity, not because we deny history, but because we refuse to let history be repeated. The world said never again in 1945. Today, in Gaza, we are seeing genocide in plain sight. The world needs to wake up and say never again. Thank you for watching Statecraft.